The Paul Leslie Hour, helping people tell their stories. And now, your host, Paul Leslie.
Hey, it's me. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Paul Leslie Hour. Just remember that the show is made possible through listeners and viewers like you. Just go to thepaulleslie.com and click on Support the Show. Thank you to all of you who have contributed. Now let's get into the interview.
Hey, Paul. Thank you for dealing with my wild and crazy schedule this morning. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm great. Anyway, well, thank you for, I was all set to be ready at 11, and then the nursing home called and said, can you please come up and play for gospel singing? And I can't say no to those people. So that's when I said, well, I have to leave at 10:45 to get back home at 11. And then at 10:45, they're going, can we sing Amazing Grace one more time? And I'm like, I couldn't say no. So anyway, so thank you. I appreciate it. So is your life going well?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, not bad at all. I'm in good spirits.
Good. That's a good thing. Well, I'm really, really looking forward to this today. I went to your website and, you know all the cool people. I mean, you're really slumming today to be with me, so thank you.
Come on. Well, I want to introduce everybody to the very cheerful, energetic voice that you've been hearing. This is pianist, songwriter, performing artist, Janet McMahan. She is a producer of musical works, audiobooks, dramatic works. She has toured as the keys player for the late Roy Orbison. She's worked as a session keyboard player and vocalist in the studio for a very impressive list. Dolly Parton, Steve Winwood, John Denver, just to name a few. And she's had 1,500 songs published and printed, recorded by a pretty diverse list. How about this? Lynn Anderson, Sonny James, Frank Sinatra Jr., and Big Bird, just to name but a few. I'm so honored to talk to you.
Well, Paul, thank you so much. It's my joy. Thank you so much for the kudos and the reading out, the list of a couple of things I've done. So thank you so much. It's been quite a fun journey. It really has been. And I'm just thankful that, at age 11, I got a piano so I'd know what to do with my life, So thank you. It's great to be here today. It's wonderful.
And you said you got a piano at 11. Was music something was it just natural to you?
It was. My mother's mother lived with us much of my growing up, and she was a great, wonderful piano player by ear, but also she could play Rachmaninoff or Home on the Range, whatever you needed. She would play all the time, and so I would just sit by her side and watch her. And when I was 11, my dad was in business for himself, so it was definitely feast or famine, and so we couldn't afford a piano. I wanted one so badly, and Daddy came home from work one day and said that a distant relative had died, and they wanted to know if we wanted the piano. And I literally remember I got down literally on the floor on my stomach and started kicking up my heels and screaming for joy. I did. I mean, I'm surprised they didn't lock me up at that point, but I was just thrilled. And so my grandmother kind of taught me, not really lessons we're going to have a formal piano lesson today, but, she'd always play something and then I just kind of imitate her. And so I think it flowed from her to me. And music was it's really kind of all it's been my whole life ever since, basically.
So where does the story begin? Where were you born?
I was born here in Nashville, Tennessee, Vanderbilt Hospital in 1952, November 24th, 1952, and grew up here in Nashville. And I went to almost all my life, I went to a school called David Lipscomb, which starts at kindergarten, and now it goes all the way through a doctorate. It was just a 4-year college, but I went almost all the way through with a couple of exceptions, starting in kindergarten at age 4. And so David Lipscomb has been a huge part of my life, and I still have a whole lot of connections with the school, and I taught there for a while and still connected with the music department. I've accompanied in there at the university for functions there and for students. And so I just grew up here and graduated with a degree in piano performance, which means, a lot of classical training, which that was not what I was the very best at. I got through that by the skin of my teeth, because I was just more of an ear player, chart reader, improviser, that sort of thing. But I did graduate. I actually did get a degree in piano performance. And then shortly after that was when I got the call to join Roy Orbison. So that was just a super, super thrill. Do you want me to talk a little bit about how that came about?
Oh, definitely.
Thank you. Well, there was a guy that I was in school with at Lipscomb named Joel Warren, and we had been in school groups together. The schools at that point, I don't know if they still do this, they had a recruitment group for the school where you'd go around to high schools and churches and just all sorts of places to promote the university, say, come to Lipscomb. So Joel and I were in that group together. Well, he left school to join as Roy Orbison's piano player. Now, not keyboard. He was a piano player because this was the 70s. This was kind of, electronic keyboards they were around, but they weren't in their heyday. Well, Joel called me one day and said, Roy is looking to add an extra keyboard, synthesizer. Ooh, what an exciting thing. He says, would you like to audition? And after he picked me up off the floor, I just said, Roy Orbison, are you kidding me? Yes. And so he said, well, no, it's not really exactly just regular like rhythm piano. You'd be playing the string parts and the horn parts, and it's a lot of music-y reading stuff. I said, well, hopefully that degree I got from Lipscomb is going to help me out here. So he got me the chart, and I locked myself in my room for about 4 days and just worked. And about on the 5th day, I came out and I auditioned for Roy's band leader, a guy named Terry Woodlake, who was British from Birmingham, and he was also Roy's bass player. And so I auditioned for Terry, and he said, you got it. And like 2 days later, we were in Reno. So,
wow.
It was very exciting because, I was just David Lipscomb at that point was a really reasonably small conservative school, and I was a day student living at my parents' house. And then suddenly I'm in Reno with Roy Orbison and a bunch of boys. It was like, what? In fact, looking back, I'm surprised. I guess my parents really trusted me because I was young. I was just out of college. So, there I was, and I did it. And just for a few years, this is terrible. I can't remember exactly how long it was, but it was just, it was less than 5. I do remember that. 3 or 4, something like that. It's been a while. But Roy was phenomenal to work with. When you're on the road with somebody, you can see their foibles, but I never saw any of his. He was kind to every flight attendant, every restaurant maitre d', server, every hotel clerk, everybody. I never saw him raise his voice at a human being. He was very phlegmatic, easygoing, and he was just a wonderful man. And what an experience for just this little college kid, I was just on my knees thanking God every second. It was so exciting. It really was. And we toured a whole lot in Canada and all over the United States, and we also went to like the British Isles. I'm so bummed though, right before I joined him, right before he had done an Australian tour and Neil Diamond got on the stage and sang with him.
Wow.
But that was right before I got there. So I thought, hey, I could have been hanging out with Neil Diamond, but I did miss that. But it was a great trip. I loved it. loved it.
One thing that everyone has said when I've asked them, anyone who has worked with Roy Orbison, they have all said something to the effect of what a wonderful guy he was.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So kind. So kind. And it was interesting, though, because I had, been living, I was right out of college. I mean, literally, I think I graduated in December, and I think I left on the road in June. So I was right out of college, living at home. And so suddenly, Roy was my father figure. So Daddy wasn't there to tell me what to do and not do. So I figured Roy should. So, I was, young, and I would meet guys and stuff on the road. And when I was first at it, I'd always go, Roy, I met this guy, and his name is Paul, or his name is whatever, and he wants me to go to dinner. And, is that okay? And, yeah, that's fine. So finally, after I did this about 10 times, he goes, you know what? As long as you show up for the gig, do whatever you want. You don't have to have my permission to go on a date. And I'm like, oh, that's right. You're not my dad. That's right. But he was very kind about it. That was just my naivete. I was just used to, Mommy, Daddy, can I do this? So finally, he spoke the truth kindly to me. He said, I want you to have a good time. You're a big girl. You can take care of yourself. So I'll never forget his genteel spirit in telling me, I'm not your daddy.
Are there any numbers that you all would perform that you were especially drawn to?
Yes. Well, of course, Pretty Woman just stirs something in your soul like nothing. Just that bump, 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 the iconic lick. It's just because I'll never forget that song was a hit when I was in the 8th grade. And I'll never forget, there was a guy in my class that I kind of had a crush on, and he just showed up one day with the Pretty Woman 45 and gave it to me. And it was like life changing. 8th grade, you're just discovering all that stuff. So I'd always loved Pretty Woman. So to be on the stage with Roy Orbison playing Pretty Woman, it was like an out of body experience every single night. Of course, the audience was nuts. But I would have to say my favorite song was Crying. That was second. We opened with Only the Lonely, the dum, 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 and then went straight from that to Crying. And to me, Crying is just one of the most beautiful songs ever. It's the melody, the words, it's so tender. So I would have to say, when I hear Crying, when I play Crying at like a solo piano gig, I get tears in my eyes. I mean, it's spectacular. It's absolutely spectacular. But I actually love all of his songs. I love Blue Bayou and Leah, and there was never a moment in that show that I wasn't ecstatic. So fun.
Oh yeah.
So fun.
Leah, what a great song. Well,
yeah.
What about your writing? When did you start to write things?
Well, in the 4th grade. In the 4th grade, I started writing poetry with my dad. And I still have the first poem I ever wrote. So it started out with poetry and stories. But I always, even as a little kid, made up stories and songs and rhymes my whole life. And then, but as far as like professionally writing, the first song I ever wrote, like a complete real song, not a 4th grade song, but like a real song, was with Becky Foster, Bill LeBounty's wife. And I think we were in college, and it was called Goodbye Song, and it was recorded by Sonny James. Seriously, I can't believe Sonny James recorded it. I mean, it's like one of those kind of beginner luck things, or beginner blessing. I don't know. We didn't really exactly know a lot about songwriting, but Sonny was kind enough to record the song, and we were so thrilled. I was at Lipscomb College, and Becky was at Pepperdine University, And they did a big article in her school paper at Pepperdine on it. And so that was my first foray into like a professional writing situation. And then shortly after that, it was kind of a twin stint. I was writing with Tommy Boyd. You know, I don't know if you've ever interviewed Bobby Hart. Have you ever interviewed Bobby Hart?
We've talked on the phone, but we got to circle back around and do that.
Yes, absolutely. Well, he's awesome. I don't know him. I have met him. I don't know him. But I was writing with Tommy Boyd, you know, his partner. We had a song that was recorded by Lynn Anderson, who was, you know, a big star in those days too. And so at first I was thinking, well, this songwriting's just easy. You just kind of throw something out there and it gets recorded. And then, you know, 872 songs later, I had another cut. You know what I'm saying? It happened really fast at the beginning. But then, you know, I realized it was quite a blessing, but not the norm. But can I tell a little story about the Lynn Anderson song?
Oh, I'd love that.
Thank you. Tommy and I were very good friends, too. And we knew that Lynn Anderson had a daughter named Lisa, a little girl. I guess she was probably 7, 8 years old, something like that. So we worked on this song called I'm Growing Up All Over Again. And it's a mother looking at the world through the eyes of her child. That's the whole perspective. And we thought this would be a good thing for Lynn Anderson because, you know, she has this little girl. And Lynn Anderson's husband at the time, Glenn Sutton, was the producer. So I met with Glenn Sutton and pitched the song, and then Lynn cut it. Well, this was in the 70s. For decades, I thought, how I would love to meet this Lisa, this little girl, you know, that Lynn Anderson was singing this song about, that probably because of Lisa, she was interested in such a song. So anyway, about a year ago, I have a friend, and one day we were having lunch, and he said something about, yeah, Lisa Sutton and I went, wait, Lisa Sutton? I said, would that by any chance be Lisa Sutton, it's Lynn Anderson, and Glenn Sutton starting? He goes, yeah, he says, we're really good friends. So I said to my friend, please, I must meet her. So about 2 months ago, my friend arranged a lunch, and now we have lunch. This was probably 3 months ago. We've had like 3 lunches, and Lisa and I are now friends. And it's very, very sweet, because I think that was the little girl that her mother was singing the song to that I wrote back in the 70s. You know, so it was a full circle thing. But Lisa is an awesome human being. She's just wonderful and lives right here in Nashville, not that far from me. And so it's just kind of interesting how the past comes back when you least expect it, you know?
Definitely. Absolutely. Wow. So can you tell us about any other recordings that people have made of your songs?
I have had a few country, like I had a Helen Cornelius cut. I've had more gospel cuts, Sandy Patty and Larnell Harris and a girl named Johnny Erickson. I don't know if you're familiar with her, gospel singer. But 99% of what I have done over the years has been writing children's, mostly Christian, some just educational, fun songs, and also theatrical production. Did one song for Sesame Street Records. That was fun. It's called Itch and Scratch, and it's by Deferred. So that was, and I actually got to have lunch with Carol Finney, who is Big Bird, which was pretty fun. But most of what I've done, like I say, has been these recordings for children's choirs, and they're, you know, it's a tiny little piece of the music business pie. But I mean, these things in the day when children's choirs were really big. I mean, these things they were like big. I mean, I was able to live indoors, you know, off the Roy Orbison. So it was It was really fun. And I wrote like the words and the music and the scripts and the stage directions and the costuming, and the props and the director's note. Most of the time it's kind of one-stop shopping. Plus, I was involved in the recording process as well. I had a group of children called the Kid Connection that we got to just sing on. We sang on all my stuff, of course, but then we got hired out, by the Steve Winwoods of the world and John Denver's and Dolly Parton to sing on records like that as well. But as far as my own writing, it was mostly these theatrical things, and even now I'm still writing theatrical work. That's really my thing. There's a company here in Nashville that licenses these works to high schools and universities, and of course, I would love to go to Broadway, but who wouldn't? But these are just more like a summer stock group would do or something like that. But these theatrical works are published, and in fact, the one that I wanted to mention to you that I'm presently working on and have been for the past 5 years, which really reminded me of you, the Paul Leslie Hour, helping people tell their stories. This musical is the story of Scheherazade, the iconic female hero of all these Middle Eastern and Asian folk tales. She's a mythical character, but the story is she saves her kingdom by telling her story. And so that's the theme of that musical. So I'll send you a copy once we're done. But we performed it I think we've done it like about 5 or 6 times, like at a local school here. And, we're still perfecting. Every time you do it, you go, ooh, why do we do that? Change that, take that song, cut that, pick up that tempo, slow that tempo down, all the things you do when you workshop. So we're still working. I have a partner that I've worked with on a lot of projects, a guy named David Huntsinger, who would be a great interview for you. He's fascinating and brilliant. And he and I are working on that together. So the story of Scheherazade is a story that my dad told me growing up. And so this is my Thank You Daddy musical, So that's really, it's fun. It's very fun. It's kind of a dramedy. It's a musical dramedy, I guess you could say, because it has a powerful message, but it's very comedic as well. So.
Very interesting. I would really, really love to check that out.
Thank you.
I have to wonder, because Big Bird is a character known to all. I can't remember the first time I saw or heard the voice of Big Bird. What's it like to be the writer of something and have a character like Big Bird there? The thing that you created is coming out of the mouth of this character.
The word is overused, but it was kind of surreal. Actually, I co-wrote that song with a friend of mine named Dennis Scott, who, again, would be an incredibly wonderful interview. Dennis is a great guy. He lives in Nashville. He has, he's won Grammys. He's just a tiny little rabbit hole on Dennis. Dennis, when he was a kid, he was a Broadway star. He played Winthrop in The Music Man opposite Burt Parks and then opposite Eddie Albert. But then he grew up and became a songwriter and producer. And he has recently produced 2 recordings of Fred Rogers songs, and one won a Grammy. So anyway, Dennis and I co-wrote Itch and Scratch, this song by Big Bird. And Dennis was from New York and had worked a lot with Sesame Street, so he held my hand a lot of the time, that works. No, Big Bird wouldn't say that. Yeah, that's very Big Bird. No, yeah. So he was really my hand holder teacher. He led me through that co-writing process. So it was, just to think about, it was kind of Gary past. That's almost holy ground there, Big Bird. So, when I heard the recording, it was hard to connect. That was really Big Bird singing my words and music. It's ecstasy. It's a high joy. It's a high joy, I would have to say. Probably I mean, if anything I've ever worked on or recorded, that's probably been one of the thrills. Just because, I mean, Big Bird's just amazing. I mean, he makes everybody happy. You know, who doesn't love Big Bird? So, and then to get to have lunch with him was a pretty big deal too. So it was, I was so thankful. It was great. Absolutely.
Well, quite a departure from Big Bird, but I mentioned at the beginning you had a song recorded by the late Frank Sinatra Jr., a song called
Loving You Gets Better All the Time.
Loving You Gets Better All the Time. It slipped out of my mind for just a moment. But can you tell us about how that came about and maybe what inspired that?
Well, thank you for asking. At that point in time, it was the 70s, I was trying to, I was co-writing a lot. I was writing on my own a lot. I was hanging out on Music Row, just really trying to get in, working, just pounding the pavement on 16th Avenue. And I became friends with a guy named Billy Strange. Did you ever interview him when he was alive?
I never did. I'm familiar a little, but tell us a little about him.
Billy was a great guy, and I don't think I'm misspeaking, I'm almost positive he was Frank Sr.'s guitar player, band leader on the road. I believe that's right. It's been so long. Don't make me say that in court, but I'm pretty sure that was his gig with Frank Sr. And Billy also wrote the song Memories Pressed Between the Pages of My Mind. Maybe Mac Davis, maybe? He wrote that, and he also wrote the Limbo song. Dun, 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 that song. So Billy was this super nice, fun, colorful guy, so fun. And we just became good friends, and I played on some demos in his studio, and he was awesome. And so I was talking to him one day, and he said that he was doing a record on Frank Jr. Well, even when Junior's on the name, when you hear the name Frank Sinatra, it's just kind of, it's just magical. It's just completely, utterly magical. So I pitched this song, Loving You Gets Better All the Time, and Billy liked it. And then he called me maybe a couple of weeks later and said, Frank's going to be here at the studio and you should come. I'm like, oh, I was just, verklempt. So I went to the studio and got to see the recording, and Frank Jr. asked me to sit in the vocal booth with him. And of course, I just felt like I was like Lucy Arnaz in that new Jazz Singer movie with Neil Diamond. Not new, but not the old Jazz Singer. Anyway, so I got to know Frank Jr. a little bit, and he was a very, very nice man. So that's how that came together, and that was just a treat. Of course, I was hoping, I thought, maybe I'll get to be his best friend and I'll hang out with Nancy and Tina and the whole gang. That didn't happen, but that's okay. That's okay. But it was, and I love the recording. I think Frank did a great job, and the orchestrations and everything were beautiful. It was recorded at Woodland Recording Studio in East Nashville. That was a high too. And I'm not sure, but I think that was the same time I was doing The Road with Roy Orbison, or at least close in time period. So, I was just like, the whole world was like, whoa, this is exciting. I was like L.A. Clampett gone to L.A. So it was really fun. And that's amazing that you found that song. How did you find that song?
Well, I have the vinyl record of that. It's All Right is the name of the album. It came out in 1977. Yeah, I'm a musical digger. I like to find things like, I went and I listened to the Sonny James song you had recorded. I looked up the Big Bird song. Yeah, I like to.
Oh my, thank you.
I like to find things,
Well, that's so flattering. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's very sweet. Thank you. Because, to tell you the truth, I probably have not listened to any of those songs. Maybe not even since the 70s. That's terrible. I should. But I don't even have copies. Isn't that awful?
I can get you a copy if you like.
You'd be my best friend. Thank you.
Well, speaking of this digging, there's something that to me I was very intrigued by. Billy Graham is somebody who has really captured a lot of people.
Yes.
People from all kinds of walks of life. I remember one time Bob Dylan was being asked who has inspired him. People were expecting a singer-songwriter, and in this particular instance, he was talking about how Billy Graham had inspired him. Can you tell us about, there was a song of yours that was featured on a Billy Graham crusade, is that true?
Yes. It was a song recorded by a man named Larnell Harris, a just incredible gospel singer. And it was called Let His Children Rejoice. And I didn't see the broadcast. I just remember it showed up on an ASCAP statement. So I don't know where it was or I think it was done, broadcast a bit because I made more than 32 cents, but it was, I don't know what year, but Larnell Harris sang it. And then I remember when Larnell Harris recorded it, it's a song that had a little kids choir on it. So I got to, write the song and then got to do the kids choir on it too. And I will say this, my former husband co-wrote that song with me, Ted Wilson, and he's a brilliant keyboard player, arranger, and great writer. So we wrote that together. And I guess that was probably around the late 80s, maybe early 90s, but I think late 80s, I think. But his name is Larnell Harris, and he was phenomenal. And he did a few big duets with Sandy Patty, the phenomenal gospel female singer. That song was used on a lot of, I think I had 5 songs that she recorded, but one of them was used on a lot of, like, telethons, like for children raising money for different causes, not cerebral palsy, but some of those fundraising big televised events that she would do. She sang the song and as a duet with her daughter. She sang it with her daughter on a lot of broadcasts too. But I love these two Christian singers, Larnell Harris and Sandy Patty. They're amazing. And together, their big hit, which I did not write, it's called I've Just Seen Jesus. You should look that up. That's a very powerful gospel song. So, but that's so interesting about Billy Graham, my goodness, and Bob Dylan. Who'd have thunk?
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yes, I love that.
I want to go back at the beginning when I was talking about the experiences that you've had doing session work and vocal work and that kind of thing, contracting with different people like Dolly Parton, one of my favorite artists, Steve Winwood. Can you?
Yes.
And then I said John Denver, Carrie Underwood. There's been a bunch of them. Can you remember one of those in particular that was especially thrilling?
Well, the Steve Winwood thing was really cool because he was there, his wife was there. Sometimes you work for these people and they're not even there. You're working on the recording, but like my friend David Hunsinger has played on Aretha records, but he's never met Aretha, So it's like, at that point, Steve Winwood was there with us in the studio, and the song was the theme song from the movie Balto, Balto. I don't think it was Disney, but it was one of those big animated movies. And I think it was called Look to the Light or Look for the Light, something like that. But he was there and he was so kind. And he had married a girl from Belmont University, which is right here in Nashville. And, Eugene, I can't remember her name. He left me. But she was nice. He was nice. I mean, there was not an ounce of I'm Steve Winwood. Not at all. He was great. But probably one of my favorite, and Dolly Parton, that was exciting. She was not there, but I've met her on other occasions. And then also, actually, a friend of mine and I'm going down a little rabbit hole, a friend of mine wrote a show for Dollywood, a Christmas show for Dollywood that ran for several years. And so I had that Dolly connection. And, like I said, I've known her through other things. But when we literally sang on her record, she was not there that day. But I would have to say, John Denver. We probably had, I'm thinking 8 to 10 kids in the studio that day. And these kids were real. I mean, they were always extremely polite and well behaved. So it wasn't like a bunch of, rowdy kids in the studio, but he hung out with us like all afternoon. Like when they were, like they do a playback and stuff. And so he'd just go out in the lobby and hang out with us. He was awesome. He was absolutely the kindest, funniest, sweetest, friendliest. I loved John Denver. I mean, I can't believe he left us so early. He was just fantastic. Because like I said, he was just one of us. He was one of the kids. So that might be, I'd say that's probably the height as far as a studio experience, as far as like a star. Now, I will say this, he's not a star, but a couple of years ago, right before COVID, I got to work with a producer named Michael Boddicker, who is an incredible, he lives in California. Like I say, he's not somebody that you've heard of, like Frank Sinatra or something, but he's produced, I mean, if you look him up, he's produced everybody. But I worked on a project with him and my friend David Hunsinger, and he was amazing just as far as the brilliance he brings to a project. Plus, he was fun to hang out with him. The studio was in his house, and he would have us over for lunch every day. Like we'd sit out on his patio and have lunch with him. He was great. Again, not a household work, but Michael Boddicker, he was amazing. And he was really good friends with Steve Tyrell, and I got to know Steve Tyrell a little bit through Michael Boddicker. And didn't you say you had interviewed Steve Tyrell?
I had, indeed. Yes.
Right. I don't know him well, but we did spend an evening at his house, and he was great. So, I mean, I just am so blessed to have been around such phenomenally kind, brilliantly talented people. I mean, sometimes I feel like, that thing called imposter syndrome where you're sitting somewhere and thinking, these people think I know what I'm doing, but I'm just some dumb kid. I don't know anything. I hope they don't find out about me. Half the time I feel like I'm imposter syndrome because around such brilliance, So, but like I say, as far as the name, probably the John Denver thing was pretty amazing. And somewhere in my house, I have a picture of John and all the kids and me, and I haven't uncovered it, but I would not have thrown it away. So it's in the time capsule of my upstairs bedroom somewhere. So it was really sweet, though. I liked him so much.
Well, something else that you do, since we've been conversing and texting and everything, you perform quite a bit what you were doing this morning. I'm hoping you can tell us about this ongoing performances where you really, really are connecting with people.
Yes. Actually, a little rabbit hole going back. When I was in the 9th grade, they say some people are obsessed with the past. I think I'm one of those people. When I was in the 9th grade, our high school librarian used to get about 8 of us out of school once a week and take us to a nursing home to sing. Well, are you kidding me? To get out of school in the middle of the day? I mean, we would have gotten root canals, whatever, just to get out of school. We were so excited. So we started doing that in the 9th grade, and I never stopped. I've done steady gigs at nursing homes my whole life, and of course, during the years when I was raising my children or on the road a lot, I wasn't going regularly, but I always went some and loved it. So now that I'm sort of in these twilight years, that sounds kind of depressing, but I have just taken it on as my calling, my joy, my bliss. Joseph Campbell says to follow our bliss. This is my bliss, is going to these nursing homes. There's one that I go to more than others, but I go to several. It's called The Meadows, and it's about 10 minutes from my house. And I was just there this morning because they called me and said, can you come do gospel sing? And I'm like, I think Paul will let me be a few minutes late. So I went down there, and I just feel like these people, they just deserve so much. They've lived their lives, and I think there's only one person in this whole facility that's not in a wheelchair, and she's 106 and doesn't use a walker. So explain that.
Wow.
But anyway, they're sweet, wonderful people. There's a man, my friend, who is the former mayor of Hopkinsville, Kentucky. He's shaken hands with 8 American presidents, but he's there in a nursing home, and, you know, he can't get up out of his chair. But he can clap his hands to that music, and he can sing along. And I just love it. In fact, after the interview today, I'm leaving to go call bingo. So, you know, I mean, all this is volunteer. You know, I'm not a paid spokesperson or anything. I love it. And it's been meaningful to me because what I found was, you know, I'm a keyboard player. It's kind of hard to haul keyboards room to room, but I was wanting to go room to room some for the people who couldn't get out of their rooms. So I picked up ukulele, which I started when I was 11 and had not played since I was 11. So now I've learned the ukulele, so I go room to room, because some of these people are completely bedridden. They can't get out at all. And I mean, I do a lot of, I mean, sometimes people are literally, I mean, they're ready to cross over. I mean, I sing for people in comas. I sing for people, you know, when they're ready to take their last breath. I try not to be obtrusive to their, you know, when they're getting ready to go, but I hold their hand and I sing softly. And if the family wants it, But it's my calling, it's my joy, it's my bliss. I love it. Like today, I was playing Amazing Grace, and one of the ladies who was a former attorney, who's in a wheelchair, said, I love Amazing Grace. She said, when my husband died, he wanted his ashes scattered in the river by our house in Michigan. And he said, so we rented 20 boats and hired bagpipe players. And we all went out in the boats and had bagpipe players play Amazing Grace out on the river. And so we all sang Amazing Grace. I mean, it's a moment, you know, I mean, it's fun getting songs recorded, and that's all great and wonderful, and royalty checks are nice, but there's nothing that tops this. Nothing. I'm just so honored and happy to be able to go. I love it. And of course it's hard because you get very close to people and then they're gone. But it seems like both my parents are gone, and I don't know. I feel my dad was on the board that built this one particular nursing home. And so I feel like I'm carrying on his torch, you know, short question, long answer, but it's what I spend a great deal of time doing now because and people say, oh, that's such a great ministry. Well, it's just a joy. It's not a sacrifice. I don't look at it as a sacrifice. I look at it as fun. Besides, I'm the youngest one there, and that makes me feel good anyway.
Well, when you look through the thread of all these different things, from writing songs that are for children's productions to performing at these senior homes, and is there a purpose to all the art you create that you would say, going through the thread of all of it, is there like a main purpose to it?
Oh, that's such a great question. Well, I know I'm not on a religious radio show, but I mean, I would just have to say I have been so blessed. I had the most beautiful parents in the world. They're just incredible. Grandparents, I've been so blessed, and with a great school, my parents got the piano. I've been so blessed that all this is really kind of out of an abundance of gratitude for my blessings and to God, actually. I would have to say that's it. I think every day, in fact, in my head and on paper, you know, I have kind of a personal mission statement, what I want my life to be about. And I think every day, how can I make this day in sync with that? You know, and if I start to feel sorry for myself or fearful or depressed or anything, I'm thinking, you know, fill that up with something good. Like, for instance, just personally, on a personal note, I guess this whole thing's on a personal note, but yesterday somebody really hurt my feelings. I think it was unintentional, but I cried for probably 3 hours yesterday, just weeping, boo-hooing. So I got up this morning, you know, my stomach's hurting because I'm so hurt. And then I got the call from the nursing home. And then I went up and sang and played for those people. And I'm not hurting anymore. I'm not hurting. I mean, you can't just, you know, act like your problems don't exist. But it's like, that's a small thing as compared to, you know, you look and you see these people in the chairs and you think, I can do something that's maybe going to bring them a tiny bit of joy. They're so close to the end of their rainbow. Let's let them dip into the pot of gold just a little bit. So I'd say it's just really, I feel that it's all guided by just gratitude out of the abundance of so many blessings that I have been given. I would have to say that. And I like to say, I know I'm not on a Billy Graham show, but I'm just speaking from my heart. I'm grateful.
So what are you the happiest doing creatively?
I'd say two things. It's really and truly figuring out new ways to be with those people at the nursing home, new songs, new ways to get them to sing along, you know, how to figure out how to do the hokey pokey in their wheelchairs, you know, things like that. That's really fun for me. And then another thing, probably writing lyrics. I love writing music. Music comes a lot easier. Lyrics are very hard for me, but I love it. And I really love traditional theatrical lyric writing. I love the perfect rhymes, the matched syllables every verse. You know, if you do a pickup one time, do it the second time. You know, keeping everything matched like old Broadway, like Stephen Sondheim does, like Richard Rodgers and Hammerstein did, and Lerner and Lowe. I love I love a good country song, don't get me wrong. And I love a great pop song. I love it. But I think I am the happiest when I am working on a really intense, tightly crafted lyric. That is ice cream to me.
Well, this question is, I guess you could say, it wouldn't be possible, but if you could somehow go back and tell the Janet McMahan who was starting off in the very beginning of your music journey, in your experience in the music business, if you could give her any piece of advice, what would that maybe be?
It would be to listen to your own voice. Learn every single thing you can about all kinds of lyrics, all kinds of music, all kinds of writing of all sorts. And as a songwriter, listen to fiction book writing. Listen to Salman Rushdie interviews. Listen to Saul Bellow interviews. Listen to Danielle Steele interviews. Listen to any kind of writer and grab everything you possibly can. But don't just be an imitation. Like for years, I was trying to write country songs. And I like country music, don't get me wrong, but it's not my heart. My heart is more theatrical music. But for years, I kept thinking, I live in Nashville, I got to write country. Well, finally, I realized that's not my heart. My heart is writing these like plays for kids that are theatrical in nature. I'm much better at that. I would say, quit listening to everybody else, what they're trying to tell you to do. Take advice and heed advice when you need to, but listen to that still small voice, that deep voice that is within you. That's the first thing. And the second thing is just stop worrying about, are they going to cut this? Just do the work, jump and the net will appear, Don't worry. And I would still tell myself that today. Don't worry. Just do it. So 2 pieces of advice, I would say.
I like that. Especially don't worry, because it almost never serves a purpose.
I've read worry is payment on a debt you don't owe.
I like that.
Isn't that great?
I love that.
That might have been big. I'm not sure, but it's the truth. And I still do it constantly. And it's wrong and it eats you. And if you could think about if you could go back to every second in your life that you have spent worrying and you could scoop up that time and it was given to you now to spend that time, what you could do with it. It'd be years. You know what I'm saying? So in fact, I literally, when I start worrying, I will literally audibly say, stop. Stop. And fill the swimming pool with fresh water. Go to the nursing home. Turn on a great Netflix show. Do anything, but just stop it. Stop it. And I've spent a lot of my life worrying. I think part of that's just personality traits, but one I need to work on, definitely.
Well, on the other side of the coin, what is the best thing about being Janet McMahan?
Oh, that's such a sweet question. Couple of things. The memories that I have of my childhood. I mean, if my life if I was in a wheelchair starting today and I was at the Meadows, I could just live in my head off my childhood. You know what I'm saying? I have so many sweet memories. That's about the best thing about being me. It's just that I've been given so many, just a great growing up. And the second thing is now the people in my life that I love and that care for me. Recently I had a kind of a weird thing with my eyes and I couldn't drive for a few days. I'm fine now, but it's like I had rides to every doctor's appointment, to everything. You know, it's the people. We all need each other. And most of my friends, to be honest, are theatrical music types, you know, and so we're all like a bunch of bohemian crazies. But it's wonderful to be surrounded by great people and family. So I would say that's the best thing. Oh, one more thing. And the fact that I can do music. I'm able to spend my time doing what I want to do. I mean, like, I guess in my late 20s, I kept thinking, this music thing is too hard. I'm not going to do it. So I decided I thought, I'm just going to be an executive. So I bought all these, like, dress for success suits, like the girls wore in the 80s with those ties. And I tried out for this executive position and I actually got it. And then the day before I was supposed to take the job, I thought, this is so not me. And I called people and I said, I'm so sorry, but I just can't take the job. So I put away all those suits and got back my ratty jeans and started playing piano again. You know, I'm so thankful that I'm been able to do it. And, you know, I mean, I've waited tables. I've done, you know, I've taught school. I've worked temporaries, you know, just about everybody has to do some of that. But I'm just thankful that I've been able to make music not only my avocation, but my vocation. That's one of the best things about getting to be who I am.
Well, my last question, you just never know who will be listening, and you never know when, you never know where they are. What would you say to anyone who's tuned in with us? Totally open-ended.
I would have to say, don't worry, just be happy. I mean, forgive me for stealing the title, but stop worrying. Don't worry. Be happy because everything is as it should be. And everything will work out if you just trust and you love. You just gotta love people. You gotta love what you do. You gotta love the art you make. You gotta embrace each day and you gotta push past fears and pain and hurt and just love.
Well, Janet, thank you so much for making the time to talk to me, and thank you for the very, very interesting and entertaining and thought-provoking answers that you had to my questions.
Oh, thank you, Paul. Now I want to ask you the questions and hear about you. I mean, turnabout's fair play. We'll have to do that another day, okay? Because I would love to hear all about you. Loved your website. Loved seeing all the people that you've helped tell their stories. And I mean, we all. Oh, one more thing. Tell your story. Love. Don't worry. Be happy. And tell your story. And listen to others' stories.
That's right.
That's what I...
Well put.
Thank you. Well, you are a delightful interviewer, and if you're ever in these parts, consider yourself getting a lunch on me, okay?
I would love that. I'd be thrilled to meet you.
I would love it. Same here. Thank you to anybody, all the people out there listening. I wish you great success and happiness and joy in telling your stories. And it's an honor and thrill to be here. This was the perfect break between gospel singing and bingo.
Beautifully stated.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Until next time.
Ba 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 da beep ba boop da boop da beep ba da leap ba knock da bees I walk on to sugar get it no it is in gaga kiss I got is it on dragon I believe is a good but don't talk about again goodbye.